Oh yeah, bringing back a little bit of that original intro beat that we used to have when we first started the show. Welcome everybody to the Casuals MMA podcast. This is our second update show. I should just say my second update show. I'm alone again this week, so it's a little hard to make these new weekly podcasts that we're having, but either way, you'll get to listen to me talk for a little bit and just provide you some updates in the UFC. Missing Sean and Dan again this week, but ain't no big deal. Hopefully they'll be back next week. We'll see. But anyways, yeah, so this is the second of our new segment, the update show. These are going to be typically shorter, about 15, 20 minutes, if that. Just kind of keep you updated on the news and notes going around the UFC. I said it last week. The UFC is good. They're like the National Football League. They always know how to keep a headline going, how to keep a story going year round. So they're entertaining, to say the least, right? But man, by the way, I was just thinking about it today. I know we really haven't commented on everything going on that this year, 2020. It's been a crazy year, man. Just so much going on, especially recently. So I don't want to bring any of that up. Otherwise, I just try to have fun, bring everybody some positive news. That's what sports are for. They're for us to get away from all the craziness, all the madness. But I just want to say, hope everybody stays safe and keeps peace and share some love around the world. I think that's what everybody needs right now. So just spread that around as much and as often as you can. And, that's in regards to everything. Stay safe from COVID. It seems like that's upticking again, and just share the love, man. We just need that in general this year. It's been a crazy year, and we're only 6 months in. We have another 6 months to go. So, but anyways, so let's get talking back to sports. Man, we really touched on a lot of the new upcoming fights last week during our first update show. There hasn't been too many new fight announcements going on right now, but there's always stuff going on. We had a few storylines that came out of last weekend's event, and then we have a few storylines coming into this weekend's event as well. So we'll kind of touch on that a little bit as well. But first, let's just touch on what happened last week. So that was the headliner with Curtis Blades and Alexander Volkov. All right. For starters, that was a great card. The preliminary card was great. The undercard was great. There was a ton of good fights there. Clay Guida and Bobby Green put on a good show, and there was a number of good fights on that lower card. Again, it's one of those things where you can't miss the smaller cards, the newer people. You never know what you're going to see. Those people are fighting for something. They're not getting paid. We talk in general. UFC fighters do not get paid a lot. You want to talk about the people that are just starting out? Forget about it. Tessia Torres looked great against Brianna Van Buren. That was a good fight. It's your typical striker versus grappler, but that was a fun fight. There were some good knockouts on that undercard. Justin Giants looked great against Frank Camacho. Knocked him out. Just came out. I think he was coming in on not even maybe a 10-day notice to fight Frank Camacho. I mean, Frank's a good lightweight, man. He's 22-9. He's not someone to take lightly. And Justin came out on 10 days notice, and you could tell he was sprinting for that finish because he didn't have the training behind him. He didn't have the training camp behind him, so he was going to gas fast. So he finished Frank in 41 seconds. Frank looked like he was ready to sit back, take his time, pick his shots. Justin said, nope, not today. So, not to mention that was his UFC debut. So he got called up on 10 days notice, and that's how you show up. You're going to get signed. That was a great freaking fight. But probably the most controversial fight was Max Roshkoff and Austin Hubbard, because Austin got they put it as a knockout, but it was really a technical knockout. That was the one. So this one you might have heard, it was about the fighter that quit on the stool, like between rounds. He got to the end of the second round, he just quit. He couldn't do it anymore. He told his coach, Robert Drysdale, nope, can't do it. His coach said, no, you can do it. You're a champ. Go back in there. You got 5 more minutes. You got 1 round. No, I'm done. No, you're not. Go back in there and fight. And then Max ended up going up to the ref and said, no, I'm not going out in another round. Man, that is not a good look for a kid that had he was a pretty big prospect coming into this fight. That's not a good look for you. Granted, he took this fight on short notice, but still, like, you can't show up and quit on the stool like that, you know. But I mean, again, let me rephrase that. You can't quit on the stool and then expect that not to come up for the rest of your career. You know, I kind of feel for him a little bit there. Because I'm all about fighter safety, man. Nobody needs to get concussions or long-term damage, anything like that. But it kind of brings up a bigger issue. This became a big storyline because it brings up a bigger issue that we've seen with corners lately that just aren't throwing in the towel, you know, when it's needed to. They're not protecting their fighters. Like the first time or the last time that we saw this was Alex Smith versus Glover Teixeira. He was just getting absolutely I mean, Glover apologized to him in the middle of punching him to say sorry about this and kept going. Ironically, Alex Smith, who defended his corner on that one, which, I mean, of course he will. That's your corner, right? That's your team. He also came out and said was criticizing Max's coach, saying this isn't a blood sport. Kind of thought that was pretty funny of him to say that. But so it brings up the question, though, man, like, how much responsibility do these corners have to protect their fighters? Every responsibility too. Now, trust me, look, I get it. Robert Drysdale, you know, he Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background, world-class champion. He knows how to push himself, right? And he expects that out of his fighters, especially a young guy that's a pretty big prospect coming in. He was only 5-0, but still. And he looked pretty good in the first round. You know, he looked pretty good in that round, I thought. But Austin Hubbard really turned it up in the second, was just pummeling him, absolutely pummeling him. You could tell Max was done by the end of that second round. He couldn't even keep his arms up. His feet were heavy. I know what that feeling's like, man. You're just completely exhausted. You can't pick up your body anymore, and you can't move. Here's my thing. Robert Drysdale, let's just bring this even higher, to a higher level. Let's talk about the coaches in general. The coaches in the corner absolutely should initially say, no, you got this, go back in there, let's fight. You should absolutely do that because you're there to motivate your fighter. They're fighting in a cage. That's not for the faint of heart, man. That's not for the faint of heart. And sometimes, you know what, your fighter just needs a little motivation, especially after a tough round like that. But when he says, no, I'm done 3 times, you can't make them go back. Like, you know, he would have made him go back out there. No. That's a fighter is making a conscious decision on the stool between rounds when everything's calm. If he says no 3 times, all right, you say no once, okay, you know what? I'm going to try and motivate you. You say no twice, man, maybe I should really pull this. Are you sure you want to be done? Yes. All right, cut it. That should be the line as a corner. That's what you're there for. You're there to motivate your fighter and obviously instruct them in the middle of the fight, right? You're the coach. And again, I think everybody's problem with this whole situation is, again, just we've seen this has been a trend with some corners lately, just making terrible decisions and not knowing when to call it quits. But you got to make that decision because a lot of these fighters are not going to do that. They are like Alex Smith. He's gonna be brutalized. He's not gonna go out and say, "I'm done. I quit. This is over." You have to be responsible as a coach and know when your fighter's done. So, again, Robert Drysdale is a great coach. You've heard nothing but good stuff about him. He's a world-class, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champ. But in this case, he was wrong. That's just how it is. Again, 3 no's. 1 time I understand. 2nd time you need to start considering and really check if this is what the fighter wants. By that 3rd time, you've told them yes too many times. You need to say, are you sure you don't want to do this? No. All right, you're done. You're done. Live to fight another day. You came in on short notice, cut our losses. We're out. Let's move on. And for Max, man, this is not a good look for him. I mean, hey, you know what? Again, I'm for it. If you know that you can't, you know your limits. If you know that you're just going to get pummeled for another 5 minutes, that's damage you don't need to be taking, especially when you're young. But you're going to have that following you for the rest of your career. That's going to be tough. everybody's going to be calling you a quitter for the rest of your career, man. You're not escaping that. So, again, he was a big prospect coming into this year. He was a former wrestler. I think it was at North Carolina. He was 5-0 coming into this fight. Again, took it on short notice. Props to him for that, but you still got to be ready, man, all the time. But, again, this was a great fight, but I'll move on from that. This was a great card altogether. Again, Clay Guida and Bobby Green put on a good show. Clay Guida, I feel like he's him, like Jim Miller, who also fought on this and set a record. I feel like they've been in the UFC for 100 years. These guys are insane that they're still fighting. I just can't believe it. Jim Miller, I think he has the most UFC fights in history, like 33 or 34 after his fight against Roosevelt Roberts, which he won by submission in round 1. Damn, that's crazy. That means, think about that. That means 34 times you were fighting in the premier fighting, let me reel that back, MMA organization in the world. So you're fighting, and not to mention that he fights at lightweight. That's one of the toughest divisions, period, just because the athleticism, the amount of people that they have in that division. That's the people that he's fought. I mean, props off to Jim Miller. He'll be able, at the end of his career, be able to hang his hat and just say, I fought the best of the best for years, and I fought them again and again. Man, he has a hell of a record, too, considering fighting in that division. 32-14-0. Damn. That's awesome. And like I expected, Bilal Muhammad and Lyman Good put on a great fight. That was a ton of fun. I love watching both those guys anytime they get in the ring with anybody. So to put them together you knew this was going to be fireworks, and it was. So that was great. I love watching Bilal Muhammad especially too. Great striking. Josh Emmett, what a monster he is. He said after the fight that at some point he had torn his ACL, MCL. He tore everything in his knee. Might have been both of them. I don't even remember at this point. It was just something insane. And you're like, how the hell did you get? But you could tell, like, Shane Burgos was putting on those leg kicks. That was where he had the most success. I think he landed a few nice shots to the face. I think he even might have got a knockdown on Josh Emmett. I don't remember. But Josh was just landing the much more brutal shot. This was a fun fight. This is a fight that everybody thought was going to be fun coming into it. Both these guys lived up to the hype. They could have ended the show right after that. Josh Emmett is a beast, though. So, excited to see where he goes. I know Shane Burgos was complaining because he dropped 5 spots in the rankings for featherweight after that. But what do you expect when you lose? I mean, you got to go somewhere. Someone's got to move up. You just lost. You took an L, baby. But it was a good one. It was a good L. Because, again, it was a very entertaining fight, and you showed that you deserve to be in there. That was a hell of a fight. The headliner was, a little disappointing. This is... So I fight about this a lot with people, just people that are casual, that are watching MMA. They complain all the time like, oh, it's so boring watching 2 guys like on top of each other or whatever. Grappling is a ton of fun to watch if you know what you're watching. But this is the kind of grappling that I do not like in particular with Curtis Blades, is that he literally just laid and prayed, right? That's the kind of common phrase. He wasn't advancing position, and that's my problem. I love wrestling. I love watching grappling. But I want to see that you're trying to do something and not just hold a guy there, because essentially what you're doing is you're just playing defensive it's the same thing as like playing defensive boxing and just getting points to outpoint your opponent, make it to the end, get a decision, and walk away with your head intact. Curtis Blades was clearly the stronger guy. He was clearly the more athletic and faster guy. I understood by the end of it that he couldn't really do much because he looked exhausted. Alexander Volkov's a big guy. He's 6'7". He's huge. It's still an impressive win for Curtis Blades all around. I think it was an impressive defeat for Alexander Volkov because everybody expected Curtis to go and run over him, and he survived for 5 rounds. And hey, you know what? That's always impressive for heavyweights to make it 25 minutes. That's a long time for big boys like that. But I'm just disappointed. I wanted to see a progression in Curtis Blades' abilities, and there was just he had a lot of opportunities that he forfeited where he could have advanced his position on the ground. Once or twice there was mounts, pull his opponent away from the cage, so then that way he can get into half guard, etc., and he constantly missed him. It's the basics, man. He was missing hooks when Alexander Volkov would turn to his back. You're just like, sink in those leg hooks. Nothing. He just tried to push him down, pull him down, and then just sit on top of him. He didn't even really do that much damage. Like, it didn't even feel like he was punching him that much. But then every time, to Alexander Volkov's credit, every time he got a small opportunity to stand up, he was throwing shots to try and get in. For a little bit there in the 4th and 5th round when Curtis is standing up, you're like, oh my God, he might actually get finished. But he's tough, man. I like Curtis a lot. I hope that we just see him take away from this fight, that he needs to work on what that transition looks like and what that ground game needs to look like. Maybe go back to the drawing board a little bit and just kind of consider what his strategy is when he gets his opponents down there. Because he can take anybody down there. That's not Francis Ngannou. He's fought Francis. Francis is his only 2 losses in MMA. But everybody else he can take down, no problem, man. So you just got to figure out what you're going to do when you're down there. You got to fights are meant to be finished, period. That's it. But it was a hell of a card, man, even with a little bit of to me, it was a dud of a headliner. I always hate saying that, but that's just not the kind of grappling I like. I'm a fan of. I just think that that's just winning points one round at a time. I'm just not a fan of point fighting, period. But otherwise, man, it was a really solid card. And then we got a solid card coming up this weekend, too. I mean, come on, Dustin Poirier and Dan Hooker. That one is going to be fireworks, man. I cannot wait. We're really just trying to see, is Dan Hooker going to take that next step? Has he progressed? To me, I didn't think that he won his last fight against Paul Felder. I thought it was razor thin, but I kind of thought that Felder should have got the nod there. Dan's fought 2 big guys in his last few fights between Barboza and Felder. He's fought big strikers. Dustin Poirier is not as big as they are, but he's a fantastic striker. So we're going to see he's a fantastic all-around fighter, but a lot of time we've been seeing since he's moved up to lightweight his striking ability. So, man, this one should be a fun one. I can't wait for it. We're going to see how it goes. Lightweight, this is going to be big for the lightweight picture. Dan Hooker might sign himself up for – I mean, heck, actually, let's rewind because even if Dustin wins, think about that. He was the last guy to knock out Justin Gaethje before Gaethje went on his tear of knocking people out. 3 first-round knockouts, I believe it was, and then finishing Ferguson. And then if he beats Khabib, that's a fight for Dustin right there, man. Put him back in there. He was the last guy to beat Justin. He deserves another title shot right there. Crazy, man. That's why this division's insane, man. The lightweight's just nuts at the top of the division. Speaking of nuts, Mike Perry's in the co-main event. I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know if he's going the way of Diego Sanchez because he seems like he's losing a little bit. He cut ties with his fight camp. He only has his new girlfriend training with him and is going to be the only person in his corner for this fight this weekend. Yep. His girlfriend that doesn't even have, I think he said like she has like high school wrestling background and like karate or something. It was something crazy. But yeah, like granted, this is his words. So this is what he said on CBS Sports State of Combat podcast. All right. Peace and quiet to hear Gall's corner. That's why he doesn't have anybody in his. He doesn't want to hear anything. Peace and quiet so he can hear his opponent's corner. I don't ever hear nothing of value, bro. I have been in positions in fights. For instance, when Cowboy Donald Cerrone was going for the armbar, I didn't hear anyone yelling for me to watch for that armbar. Maybe I'm not listening or something, but I just feel like, okay, if I ain't going to listen anyways, why the F should they be here and get any of this credit? What the F did they do for me to get a front row seat to one of the best effing shows on planet Earth? Man, I gotta say, man, you gotta love this guy's confidence and love for himself. Platinum Mike Perry, man, he's something else. But that's something that you should know. All right, for starters, your coaching, your camp goes way beyond just when you're in there to fight. You have a whole fight camp. You have 6 to 8 weeks of fight camp. Who do you think's training you? Where do you think you're getting that practice from? You can't hold pads yourself. I guess there was a video out, I didn't even bother watching it, of Mike Perry's new girlfriend. Make that a little note too, because he split from his wife, which he was only married to for 7 months a little while ago. So this is like a new relationship he's in, and this girl is going to be cornering him. Granted, again, he said he doesn't need her there for any kind of support other than just to be there. He's training himself right now. Although I will say, if he's going to do that against somebody, it might as well be somebody like Mickey Gall. Nothing against like him, but it's just, he's a little bit newer to the fight game. He's only had like 8 fights, Mike Perry's been fighting the best of the best at welterweight for a couple fights now. So, I mean, if you're going to do it against a guy that's pretty inexperienced, this is going to be interesting to see. I'll tell you that, man. I don't know. But either way, there's a few fun fights on here. Unfortunately, Aspen Ladd and Sarah McMahon was canceled, but that would have been a fun one. But there's, again, still good card, still good fights throughout. So Saturdays will be fun. So let's move on. Let's talk about some. There really wasn't any big fight announcements. I think the only thing that there is in the works right now is Yoel Romero versus Uriah Hall. That's going to be for sometime in late August. That's a great matchup. I'd love to see that. That'll be entertaining, especially to see like Yoel Romero's very slow, stagnant, statuesque style where he stands in front of you, and then you have somebody that's as fast, quick, like lightning, like Uriah Hall. That'll be a matchup for styles. So I'm interested to see that. I'm hoping this one will be not so much of a dud like Yoel's last fight, but it should be entertaining. So that one's going to be a good matchup. But I'm pretty sure that we touched on pretty much everything else from last week. The other big announcement was Little Nog's gonna he's announced his retirement after fighting Shogun. Which, hell, that's a great fight. Like fighting Shogun, go back all the way to your Pride days on Fight Island. That's gonna be when you call it quits. Perfect. So that'll be entertaining, and good on him, man. Such a long MMA career. Hats off to you, man. Hats off to you. Otherwise, there's not too much out there. I'll tell you what I've been doing though on UFC Fight Pass. If you get a chance to go on there, I've been kind of digging into some of the videos on there. They're great, man. Watching Submission Underground Grappling is a ton of fun. The best submission grappler in the world, Craig Jones, is fighting on there, tearing people up. This guy's 100, I think he usually weighs in about 190, 195 pounds. He took on Anthony Johnson, like I think it was last year, and submitted him. But there's a ton of great matchups in here. Gilbert Burns was in here. Gabriel Gonzaga fought in here. Jessica I was grappling last weekend. Last weekend. It was like a week after she headlined a UFC event. It's crazy. It's so much fun, especially now that they don't have the audience there. And Chael Sonnen's doing it by himself. He's great to listen to because he provides you that insight. He does such a good breakdown. I wasn't a big fan when he was a fighter, but again, I guess it's this character he created, right? Like I wasn't a big fan of that. I did not like that at all. I like him better in retirement because these guys can be more of themselves. And he is entertaining. I'll tell you that. But he does such a good job of just breaking it down for fans that are watching. I think it's just good if you just want to learn about jiu-jitsu or just grappling in general. I would definitely recommend watching. It's a ton of fun because you know what? It's so fast-paced too. There's only 5-minute rounds. If it goes with that, if there's no submission in that 5 minutes, then you go into sudden overtime. That's what they call it. It goes into overtime, and essentially you get 1 or 2 positions. So that makes it even more fun. You either get to start on the back or you get to start with an arm. So essentially like in a arm bar position, right? And then one person has to defend and try and get out of there and escape, and the other person's going to try and submit you. So it's a ton of fun, man. It's fast. They go from fight to fight to fight. I recommend watching that if you're a fan. They have a bunch of them up there right now. I've been watching them kind of in the background as I've been working, just have them up on my screen. I just listen to Chael Sonnen talking. It's a ton of fun. And I'll tell you the other thing that I was watching today was Lethwei fighting. That stuff is nuts. It's like they're like, oh, Muay Thai is cool and all. Yeah, that's pretty tough, but we're gonna up it. So if you don't know Lethwei fighting, it's out of the country Myanmar, which used to be Burma. They country changed their name back in 2001. But whereas Muay Thai is known as the art of 8 limbs, Lethwei is like, okay, well, we're going to be the art of 9 limbs. And you're thinking, okay, Muay Thai, 8 limbs. You got your arms, elbows, or you got your hands, your elbows, knees, legs. What? Like, what's the 9th one? Lethwei is like, yeah, we're going to add in the head because they do headbutts. Nobody else, hardly any other professional martial arts sport right now is letting you do headbutts. They're like, no, we're going to do headbutts. And they utilize them intelligently in those fights. I was watching that today, man. It's intense. So first off, they only do 3-minute rounds. They do 3, 4, or 5 rounds. It's up to you. And then they have 2 minutes to rest between rounds. So these guys get a little bit more time to recover. And it's fast-paced, man. It's fast-paced. And because like you see oftentimes like in other martial art competitions, which I love in the Far East, is like these referees are fast. They move. They react. They're pretty much like they're almost part of the fight. If someone gets cut real quick, they stop, boop. They're checking, get you right back in there. The other thing, too, is they'll swab a whole bunch of Vaseline on your face. They don't care. It's not like the UFC where they like wipe it off. You can only have so much. They're like, nah, they just swab it all of you. Granted, they're not grappling, right? They're not wrestling. So obviously that's where the difference comes in, but it's crazy. And then you see how these guys utilize the what would be a traditional Muay Thai clinch, and they're using headbutts and stuff like this. These guys are getting cut open, bleeding faster. It's wild. It's fun. You can always catch the replays on Fight Pass. You kind of have to scroll down a little bit, but they always have it live. Like, it's always tough to catch those in the Muay Thai events live because they're early in the morning, right? Like, I mean, I was watching that at like 8 o'clock this morning. I had it on 7:30, 8 o'clock. So, but ton of fun, man. I definitely recommend watching that. I'm probably going to just cruise through some of their other previous events. Fight Pass has a heck of a library. They have their K1 kickboxing world champ, a lot of those events on there. Polaris events for grappling again. They have a ton of stuff, man. They have a ton of stuff in there. So just recommend diving in. But otherwise, that's it for me, folks. Oh, wait. I forgot one major headline before I go. I was about to cut out and run on you guys without talking about Dana White making that note to the fighters saying that the MMA is not a career, or the UFC is not a career. It's an opportunity. I think that's his way to fight or combat, these fighters that are coming out right now and want more pay. That's a ridiculous statement, man. I don't even know where to start with that one. I guess typically, like, when you look at what the definition of a career is, it's like it's a long-term job. It's something that you're going to be in most of your life. But to think of the commitment that these guys have put in, it is like a career because these guys have been training for a long time. Sure, their UFC stint might be short, but that's that they've put in so much training on the back end before those fights, doing all the press releases, traveling when they'd prefer to be training and not on a plane to go talk trash again to a person that they don't feel like talking trash to, or they've said their piece, they're done, they just want to get in the cage and fight, but no, they go do all these press releases. That was an absolutely absurd thing for him to say. Think of this as an opportunity. Well, Dana, not everybody gets to walk away with $1 billion when the company gets sold. So, especially when you're making money off of these guys. You know what? I've been saying this for a long time. Dana White was good for the sport. He's pushed it forward often, but the things he says and the things that he pushes against the grain on everything. Mind you, he never wanted women's MMA. It wasn't until Ronda Rousey came on the scene and proved that she can sell pay-per-views or get attendance for fights that he finally said, "Oh yeah, sure, all right, we'll try it out," and he brought women over. He goes back on his word all the time. I remember Nate Marquardt got kicked out of the UFC. I think it was for substance. I think it was banned substances or something. He went on a tirade, or Dana White went on a tirade after that and was like, "No, he's never going to be back in." He was back in, I think, like maybe 2 years later or something like that. I think he did the same thing with Tito Ortiz. But it's not even just that. It's the public perception that you're doing. We have all these baseball players right now fighting for millions and millions. Like they're fighting for millions and millions of dollars. Meanwhile, the fighters are like, I just want to pay my mortgage. Please just have fights so I can pay my mortgage. While baseball players are negotiating for, millions, whatever. Think about it. Even I haven't even looked it up for a while. What's the league minimum for those sports? Like, the big three. I know at some point baseball was like $400,000 or $500,000. the top guys in mix. Amanda Nunez got paid $500,000 for her last title defense. Whatever. I'm done. I'm done with that. So, guys, we'll catch you soon. I think our next event is not until July 11th, but we'll have another update show if there's anything fresh, anything new that's happening. Thank you for tuning in. Listen to us on fanstreamsports.com. You can download the app or go online and listen. We revamped the site. The site's relaunched. We have our own page on there. And always remember to tune into the JP show. He's up there in Tampa. Or you can catch the podcast on fanstreamsports.com. He's always entertaining. You can catch us. You can catch me actually specifically on the JP show on Tuesdays at around 3:45, 4 o'clock. I usually do 10, 15 minute catch up segment with them. So that's always fun to go on there. But guys, thank you again. Thank you for the support. Love you. Talk to you guys next time. Peace.